to yet another episode of Flicker with Jack and Scott. I am your co-host, Jack Hanley, here as always with my cinematic partner in crime, Scott Agner. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, how's it going? Pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing well, and most importantly, I'm so excited to be here back in the studio after a bit of a delay for us to return and count down a list that I am very excited about this time.
Yes, this should be a good one.
Particularly, we were a bit inspired by all the recent commentary, both good and dumpster fire, surrounding
Yeah,
the film Furiosa, which
yeah,
I rather liked and wrote about it and talked about it in some form. What did you think about that? If you've seen it, Scott?
yeah. I think it's a far better film than I expected it to be.
Yes.
I think that was the first thing. Going in, I had a lot of apprehensions for a multitude of reasons. I think it's pretty rare that a prequel does something as good as Fury Road. That was such a phenomenal film. Prequel seems like prequels don't usually do anything justice to what was already done.
Sure,
so I was a little apprehensive about that. I also was not as keen on the heavier use of CG in those trailers initially. Definitely turned off by that a little bit. I think the practicality of Fury Road was so strong that to see that heavy use of CG. But I will also say that none of my apprehension was about our lead character. I had absolutely no apprehension going into that about centralizing a story on Furiosa. Certainly nothing about her performance that was problematic, which, as that's kind of, we're hearing a lot of that split commentary, but none of that was anything I had a problem with. I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, well said, exactly. Far better than I expected with that as well. This is one of those rare cases, too, where rather than a prequel proving somewhat unnecessary, for me, I almost wish I had seen this before then the signature film following with Fury Road, because I think that the dynamics that this bring a real pathos to this character and some stakes that I think would have heightened it more for me when then I watched the marvelous Fury Road. So
I just went back and watched Fury Road yesterday, just to kind of see if what I remembered about it retained. And I actually feel like there were a lot of moments that were kind of hinted at already in that there was there was already crafted this kind of backstory that would have added that much weight to the character. So it is nice to be able to have that now as a companion piece to really help flesh that out.
I agree. I thought it was very well done. And of course, again, we'll at some other point we'll get in more into the commentary, of course, which is just that, the big story is, it underperformed, but so has every other film.
It's not
right. That is just the stage that we're in. Although, let us please take note that when Ryan Gosling's film flops, or when Paul Rudd's Marvel film flops, no one then turns it into an argument from some incel in mom's basements complaining that women are ruining cinema.
Yeah,
so,
that's the de facto argument right now.
Right, exactly.
But
it brings us to our topic of today.
Any of that toxic fandom.
Exactly right. Which brings us to our topic, inspired by our surprise of Furiosa, which is our picks for the most badass, and that is a real taxonomy that we feel is important. Most badass female protagonist in cinema, our favorites. So Scott, rounding into this, how do you want to do this? Once again, we've not shared our selections with one another. We're going to have live reaction.
I think I was looking at my list, and my guess, just because of the fact that we are separated at birth, my guess is that we probably have multiple overlaps. So I think let's just do a back and forth. I think with kind of no rhyme or reason other than shouting one out, and see where that overlap might exist, and give our praise for these badass women.
I love it. Knowing this about us to try to make this more interesting, I really tried to develop like an a subjective alt list that I thought might provide a little more deviation for us. So I'm going to try to take some wild swings here.
Well, maybe that'll save it a little bit.
Let me begin just by saying, for my taxonomy, I wanted to steer clear of some of the more obvious choices, right? Whenever you would, if you would ask this question in general media with a lot of other people and podcast friends that do this, you would get your obvious, right? Your Ripleys, you would get your Furiosas, you would get your, your Kill Bill. So I really wanted to steer away and avoid that, and I wanted to kind of play with some more subjective aspects of what makes something badass, particularly within a
Mm-hmm.
female protagonist. So with that, and also because we always find a way to cheat while doing this, let me bring up very quickly just a category that did not make my list officially, but I want to give a shout out to, and that is the badassery of the coming of age
Mm.
protagonist, because again, and I want to do a major shout out here. I think there's such a badassery to growing up as a woman in this country, and all the travails that one must do to try to grow up as a stable, wonderful adult. And there's plenty I could do here. It's a subgenre film that I love, is the coming of age film. Perhaps my favorite is the marvelous film by Andrea Arnold, Fish Tank, and her
Mm-hmm.
protagonist Mia there, which I think is marvelous. But I want to give my extra credit shout out to the character of Kyla from Eighth Grade, directed by
Ah, yeah,
Bo Burnham, because
yeah.
nothing more to say there. There is nothing more badass than surviving middle school and moving into high school with your dignity intact, with developing, with learning, with growing up and learning how to establish yourself as a wonderful human being and staying on the good side in doing that. I thought it was a lovely film, a lovely performance, and a lovely character. So that is my Kyla from Eighth Grade is my extra credit shout out.
That's a phenomenal one. I know we're both huge fans of that film and of her performance. That is a great choice.
I've heard
I'm
rumors may have cried during that screening at a certain film festival. Just rumors.
I'm glad you're being a little bit more intellectual about your choices. Um, mine are
It
definitely a
ends
little bit
here.
more.
It's all garbage after that.
Mine are definitely a little bit more of the classic
Yes,
take
yes, let's do it.
category. So let's see. Let's see. I'll start off. Because you did sort of give shout out to these. I will start out with some of the obvious ones. Or should I shout out my extra credits first?
Your extra
Hmm.
credits. I'd love to
Let's
hear.
shout out my extra credits first. Now that I'm looking at them, maybe they shouldn't be extra credits. Maybe these
That's
should be
always what
credits.
happens, though, right?
So I've got two extra credits, and
Okay.
the reason I placed these as extra credits, it has nothing to do with how badass they are as roles. They are ultimate badasses. It really has to do with the fact that most of the rest of my list was classic takes, and
Great.
these were more contemporary takes. So these are two films that were a little bit more recent in memory, and that's why I picked them and sort of set them aside as my extra credit to give a shout out to the fact that we are still getting phenomenal films with badass women as the protagonists. So let's
Excellent.
keep that in mind. It's still happening. And so my two shout outs. First of all, I've got Carrie Mulligan's portrayal as Cassie in Promising Young Woman. Right? I mean, what a film! What a take on a revenge flick! So great, such a great character, and definitely an ultimate badass there, completely in control of that film.
I
So
love
that's
this
number one.
choice, by the way. You know my love
Oh,
and
I know.
passion for that film.
It's so good, right? And then number two, and I've given you a little sneak preview of this. We've
Yes,
got right behind
I
me.
was wondering.
Uh, so we've got Emma Stone, Bella Baxter in Poor Things.
Bravo.
I think again a phenomenal choice. This is a woman, ultimate badass woman who is in complete control of every aspect of her destiny, and I love it. I just love that portrayal. So there we go.
That list alone is fantastic. We could have just capped it right there, right? With our extra credit. So let's move on to now and we decided we were going to do no order in this, right? We're not creating a hierarchy of female badassery.
No,
It's
there's no
shared
no point in
equally here.
pitting them against each other,
That's
right?
right. That's right. So let's just toss back and forth with the five that we all happen to love. I'll jump in over here with one of mine that I found just more interesting in terms of both contemporary and kind of deviating a bit with some much needed representation within that genre of the strong female protagonist. And this was another film that is aimed more toward popular taste, but surprised me with how nuanced and fun it was for me. And that is the character of Naru from 2022's Prey, um,
Mm-hmm.
portrayed by the great actress Amber Midthunder. I thought this was a wonderful way to inject some new life into a very masculine franchise,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
to have this wonderful inversion too, and this would be under the taxonomy too of badassery through um, adaptation, through resilience. It is not
Mm-hmm.
just a general strength; it is for using her intelligence.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the use of intelligence finds a way to overcome and be victorious. And I thought that was making some wonderful statements about this dichotomy between how men and women are portrayed in such badass roles. Marvelously fun, great performance by her. I can't wait to see her in more things. And got the big thumbs up by Arnold himself for that as a worthy successor to that. So really
Yeah.
loved that performance a lot. So Naru
Yeah,
from Prey.
that's a great choice. Great choice. Great film. Definitely one of those films that I feel like in some ways is undervalued. I mean, it does have its recognition and praise, I think, but
Yeah,
it's amongst us people, right?
yeah. Right?
General populace. Definitely, I think it's still a little underseen.
Sure, sure.
Phenomenal film. Yeah. To play off that, I will swing to the sister franchise. And I will give our classic take.
Yes,
You knew this was going to be on the list, right? So
had to be, had to be.
we've got Sigourney Weaver, Ellen Ripley in the Alien franchise. I mean, what more is there to say, right? That kind of sets a pretty gold standard for what we expect in our action based female protagonist. Yeah, so we'll swing it to the sister franchise. We'll give that shout out.
Love that choice. Love that. I mean, right? Yes, foundational, foundational
Foundation.
as a character that comes out with that. I absolutely love it. And again, with apologies to J Law, who announced herself as perhaps America's first female action hero. Yeah,
Right?
we'll go back to that. Give props where due. I have another legend. We'll get back to that as well, relating to that. All right, so throwing back to mine, I want to spin in a different direction. This is kind of a play off of our idea of another revenge film, much in the
Mm-hmm.
genre of Promising Young Woman, which is a marvelous genre, but one that, when done through the masculine lens, the male gaze, always stems itself from how one can levy violence in this masculine form of retribution that has become a
Yeah.
standard within the genre. So I'm always impressed when people take on the subgenre and try to do some inversion or something marvelous with it. A film I want to call to attention to is one of my favorites. I also think a bit underrated within the canon, and that is the wonderful film from 2018 by director Jennifer Kent, and that is The Nightingale,
Oh yeah.
which I think is just an absolutely marvelous film about both an Irish woman, political prisoner in Tasmania, who has to go against colonialism and go against the British occupiers and oppressors who levied a terrible crime against her entire family, and working with her indigenous partner to kind of right the wrongs of colonialism. And so it starts off, Scott, in a very traditional sense of this female character clearly just wanting vengeance in to
Mm-hmm.
meet the violence head on and deliver it blow by blow in return. But then Kent does this wonderful subversion, showing that as the character goes deeper into violence, how shallow that type of
Yeah.
retribution is, and turns it more into the idea of merely having a voice and telling your truth and telling it openly is the most powerful form of revenge. And that was the wonderful Irish actor, and I want to make sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, Aisling Fenshoise, playing the great character of Claire Carroll in The
Yeah.
Nightingale. A marvelous film. I urge everyone to see it.
Yeah.
Same director of The Babadook, and this is the
Mm-hmm.
follow-up film, and I thought it was just masterful.
Yeah, I actually think it's Babadook is a very beloved film amongst that genre, and I actually think this is a much stronger film,
Yeah, yeah.
just in terms of an
Not enough
overall.
people talk about this film. Yeah,
No, no, I totally agree, and it's a gorgeous film too. Let me state that too. So,
beautiful.
in addition to that phenomenal performance, it's a really great film for a lot of reasons. Yeah, that's a great choice. That's a great choice. I haven't really come back to that film mentally since I've seen it, but I remember really loving it and having some of those conversations with you. Yeah, that's a great choice. Well, I guess if we're gonna try to play this, let's connect the dots game.
Oh, yes.
I will give you the must be mentioned, but perhaps more. I shouldn't say perhaps the shallower take on a revenge,
Which
like,
we also love, by the way.
which we also love. I
Don't
mean,
get us wrong.
there is a place for this. So we'll swing to the other side and say, hey, revenge can be a little bit more shallow and still be enjoyable. And
Absolutely.
I will give you. I actually don't know how you feel about this film as a
Ooh.
whole. I know your opinions on aspects of this pick, but I don't know actually much about this one. This will be interesting. So I'm going to give. I think this is a shout out that would be on so many lists, so many worthy lists, and that's Uma Thurman as the bride in Kill Bill. Here we've got a little bit more shallow of that revenge flick, but what a great story. We know the origins. We know Quentin Tarantino's deal. I know you've got things to say about that.
What?
Um,
I might have something to
but
say about.
But
But I love it.
film aside, Quentin Tarantino and opinions on him aside, that is still a great character. That is still a phenomenal character to think about in terms of that badass legend aspect.
All right, I love it. And now, in a wonderful way, we can connect the dots. Love that choice. I
Oh, I know
actually
where you're
would
going.
love Uma
Oh,
Thurman in this, but I am going with Quentin's source material here. The film that he just blatantly ripped off shot for shot. You know, and of all the ones that I levy that charge against old QT here. This one may be the most egregious. Even if I urge our watchers, our followers, at some point, if you're not familiar with the wonderful film from 1970s called Lady Snowblood,
mm-hmm.
this is the source material for Kill Bill. Even when you go watch that trailer, and I urge everyone to go do that after watching this, just put on this trailer, number one, to learn just how badass the original is and why
Yeah.
you need to have it in your life. But also just realizing, oh yeah, there's like 10 shots alone from the trailer that you're like,
Oh yeah.
okay, that's just a complete obvious ripoff
100%.
there. But so I want to give a shout out here to Japan's great revenge actress here, and that is the great Miko Kaji playing Yuki in Lady Snowblood. A marvelous film, the obvious companion piece here to Kill Bill. Watch both of these. These are two badass women just tearing through the countryside, getting revenge. It's just marvelous. Both films are just so much fun to watch. You have to.
Yep.
I think they're wonderful bookends to go watch.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, again, all rip-offs or homages aside, whatever you want to call them. Yeah, it's a phenomenal choice, and it's very clear those connections. So yeah, makes sense to have it on this list, right?
Love it. All right.
All right.
Final two. What do you got?
Okay. Can we connect the dots further? Is the game I would like to play.
I've been very impressed so far with that component of it.
Okay.
We managed to still be apart but connected.
I'm going to connect the dots one more time for you.
Woo, let's do it.
Okay. So we are going to give a shout out here to a legend, an absolute legend of this genre. Multiple films I could reference, including one, I think you might know where I'm going, by Quentin Tarantino. We've got Pam Grier, Coffee, Foxy Brown, Jackie Brown. I mean, the legend continues. The list continues. Every single film she's in, right, could be placed in this category. This list could not be complete without Pam Grier. And I know how you feel about that.
Well, aside from just being totally in love with Pam, as I always have been, she has been so kind and gracious as a human being. As you well know, too, I've had the privilege to have some interviews with her. She is lovely. I'm going to get to meet up with her again here at the Colorado Festival of Horror coming up. She is one of our guests showing up here in Colorado and Denver to come visit for her contributions to horror as well.
Excellent.
She's one of the early pioneers in horror of that, and I get to have the privilege of sitting down with her again. She's an insanely marvelous person, and let me tell our audiences too, because I am also going to name Pam Grier here. I think it's perfect just with your bookend, particularly with the character that I love of Coffee. I think with such a foundational but transgressive Black female protagonist early on. I will also argue this is proto Ripley. I think, and I think that, you know, I pointed this out to Pam personally. I was like, Pam, you were literally America's first female action hero. And she's so humble that she really doesn't even. I think she may appreciate it, and she certainly expressed gratitude. But I don't know that she truly understands that field of what she set off. And I think it's so important that we recognize it. And this is for the great character of Coffee, nurse by day, who sees the horrible effects of the heroin trade in her city, becoming murderous instrument of revenge by night. Plus, you have to love anyone whose character's actual name is Flower Child Coffin. Props to that. Who goes on her murderous rampage of revenge, but also, so it's so transgressive, it's so badass, it's so marvelous. She has such charisma with what she does, and it was such an important feat for representation in cinema, not only just for women, but for African American women. It was so vital, and I love that this character at the end of her whole swath of blood and badassery finishes the job. The sun comes up, and she returns to her work as a nurse. The ultimate badass profession. So love that as well. Yes, Pam Grier is an icon, and with this one too, she would. If I was ranking this would be number one on my list. But if we were doing the hierarchy, because I just love her so much. But also you almost can't even name a character. There's so many great characters. Jackie Brown, all these
Yeah.
other great figures she played. It's almost like Pam Grier just transcends. So the character is just Pam
Oh yeah.
Grier, right? So
Absolutely.
marvelous choice,
Absolutely.
100% behind you. Love Pam Grier.
Absolutely. Great choice. And you're right. You're right in so many ways. Sets the model for so many of these other characters that we're discussing too. I think that's
Just the best. A
absolutely fair.
legend.
All right, let's keep it going. Who do we go with next? I don't know that I can connect the dots anymore. Other than, well, bust out some guns. Maybe that's the only way we can connect the dots anymore. I'm not sure that I've got a connection here. Correct me if I'm wrong. So are we down to 2 or 1?
Just one more.
We got just
Final.
one more. So I think we may have some overlap here again, because I absolutely do know that you love and celebrate this character as well. So I will give my final pick here for Jodie Foster, Clarice Starling, Silence of the Lambs.
My final pick as well. So let's
Okay, there we go.
Time together to praise the great character Clarice Starling.
Yep. Okay, makes sense. Makes sense that we both have that as our final pick.
I love that our top 2 was the same. I was very hopeful we'd have some divergence here, but obviously these are the 2 greatest choices. Let's celebrate them.
I think that is it's an absolutely necessary addition to the category.
Yes.
What list wouldn't be complete without having Jodie Foster right there?
Well, and it's such a marvelous character too, Scott. And we've talked about this many times. It's I think like the best feminist representation on film for me personally. I love the fact that it's also a badassery, not born out of a physical necessarily violence, but one just done of actual courage, of strength of character, right?
Yeah.
This kind of lends itself into this subsidiary category of characters like Margin Fargo or things like that, right? That have the nobility of having the strength of character to navigate in a world of evil. In Clarice's point too, in a world of patriarchy. I think an underplayed aspect of this film is just, the film literally begins with her running in the woods with no context for you to understand. And immediately, because of how we're conditioned by all such films that came before it, we think of her, it playfully teases this could be a woman in peril, but oh no, it's at the FBI Academy. But also, I urge anyone who hasn't revisited this film in a while, a marvelous trick that director Demi did here is to frame every male character exactly the same way, whether they are serial killer, cannibal, head of the FBI, scientists at the Department of Entomology. Everyone is framed exactly the same way from her perspective, kind of creating this idea later on done so well in Promising Young Woman that for a woman navigating this world and these imbalances of power, specifically within law enforcement and this theater that she operates in, the threats, the potential threats of every single man in this from the perspective of women and how she navigates that using intelligence and grit. That's the other thing. And quite honestly, too, I saw a list the other day where someone was doing a countdown of like the greatest heroes in film. And, male or female. And I got to say with mine, it's Clarice Starling.
Oh, yeah.
Openly, Clarice Starling is like my favorite hero in cinema. She is amazing, and I love her dearly as a character. And in fact, I was so protective of that in some of the subsequent additions to that franchise, I was out completely, not only because Foster wasn't involved, but some, I think, perilous turns in her character that I think, kind of undercuts the real value. So I discard all these other ones as canon, but Silence of the Lambs, Clarice Starling, a marvelous, most badass female character and a true American hero. One of the best characters I think ever done on film for me.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've always really appreciated about the character and the sort of path that she takes, and I'm glad you said it, is that intelligence. I feel like there is always a very calculated necessity to her choices. Whether it's like a big choice, like one of these bigger kind of like, let's go physically do something, or even just like in a conversation. It's always calculated. It's always intelligent. That she is steps ahead of everything that's happening. And I just love that kind of really intentional, like mental calculation to what is happening, and I've always really respected that.
Yeah, I think it's a marvelous performance. I have a tradition with my own daughter Mia. Every year on her birthday, we rewatch Silence of the Lambs because it's just
Nice.
like the greatest character to strive for. We love her to death. It was one of the first horror suspense films I introduced Mia to at a very young age, and she took to it hard. So gotta love it. It's a great choice, and our list is fantastic. I love that we have some overlap there at the end. So again, this is just a quick celebration of all female badassery in cinema. There are so many more on this that
So
could have
many
been
more.
added to this list.
So
Narrowing
many.
to the top 5 felt painful at
Yep.
time. So, any of you watching, leave comments below. Who did we leave out? Who is a terrible omission that we should have had on this list that you can chide us about? What areas of cinema regarding strong female characters are we missing? Are there genres or other parts
Hmm.
of the world that maybe we're missing from? We'd love to hear from you because this is literally a project about film discovery and appreciation. And that's
Yep.
why if you're watching this, that's what we want you to do. If we named a film or performance that you're not familiar with, go check it out.
Go
And
watch it.
likewise, if there's one
Yep.
we need to see to further
Tell
our
us.
filmic education, let us
Tell
know.
us. Yeah.
We'd love to hear.
Awesome. Sounds
All right.
good.
Well, brother, thank you
Enjoy
again for
watching.
joining me on this quick
Yeah.
punch to it. It's always lovely to meet up and talk cinema with you.
Absolutely.
Now I kind of just want to go watch Silence of the Lambs again. So, what time is it? Is it too early to put on Silence of the Lambs? I mean, I think
Is there
I
too
think I
early
may do it.
for it? Hmm.
You just sold it to me again for how much I love her. I just may go watch it right now. Followers, thank you so much for following us on yet another short batch episode of Flicker with Jack and Scott. You can find us on Facebook and here on YouTube. And for us to just conquer the algorithm, if you're a cinephile like us, you love just talking about film, please like and share. That's just the best way that we can get spread out there. And share this with someone who also loves fantastic, strong female characters in cinema. And thank you for watching. We'll join you
Yep.
next time.
Keep
Brother, talk to you
watching.
soon, man.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited for whatever we've got planned next.
Oh,
Keep
hey,
watching.
tell our watchers too, if they like us in a short form, where else can they find
Yeah.
us?
Yeah. So if you're liking these short form videos, these quicker takes on some things, you can always dive into our much longer takes on celebrated films over at Blind Spotting, a film discovery podcast. That is a much longer form podcast that Jack and I do, where we find the blind spots in our film education, watch those films, and have some really fantastic conversations about films that are, I think, every time we are amazed that these are films that escaped our knowledge. We've found so many phenomenal films through this process. So if you like what we're saying here, join us over there. Get your stuff ready and watch those films and join that conversation with us.
We love it. Thank you for being part of our family, everybody. Until next time, we'll see you soon.
See you
Have a
next
great
time.
one.